She hasn't said, I love you yet. But she already told you everything with one share, one post, one small digital gesture you probably scrolled right past. Most men are staring at her words, waiting for a confession that's never coming in the form they expect. Meanwhile, she's already speaking, loudly, just not with her mouth. There is one specific thing a woman does, almost involuntarily, when her feelings for you cross a certain line. It's not a text, it's not a call, it's a share. And when it happens, it means something her conscious mind hasn't even caught up to yet. So here's the question that should be keeping you up tonight. Has she already told you she's yours and you missed it? If you're here, you're probably doing what most men do at this stage and replaying every conversation, analyzing every reply time, wondering if the way she looked at you last week actually meant something, or if you're just building a story in your head because you want it to be true. You're not crazy for noticing the small things. You're not overthinking because something is wrong with you. You're noticing because part of you already senses that something has shifted, and you just don't have the language yet to confirm it. That's what this video is going to give you, the language. Here's what makes this different from every other signs she likes you video you've watched. Most of that content focuses on the obvious. She laughs at your jokes, she texts first, she remembers small details. Those signs are real, but they're surface level. They tell you she's interested. They don't tell you she's attached. There's a difference between a woman who enjoys your company and a woman whose nervous system has started to associate you with safety. That second one is rarer, and it shows up in behavior most men are trained to ignore. By the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly why the act of sharing something with you, a song, a meme, an article, a photo of something totally mundane, can be one of the strongest emotional tells a woman gives off, and why it often means more than the words she actually says out loud. You're also going to learn why women don't announce their feelings the way men expect them to, and why waiting for a direct declaration might mean you miss the signal completely because it already happened, quietly, days or weeks ago. Here's something worth sitting with for a second. Attraction is loud. It's easy to spot, easy to perform, easy to fake even. But attachment, real emotional investment, is quiet. It shows up in the small, repeated, almost boring behaviors nobody thinks to analyze. And that's exactly why most men miss it. You're looking for fireworks when what you should be looking for is consistency. I want to plant two things in your mind right now, and we're going to come back to both of them. First, there is a specific psychological reason why sharing something with a specific person, instead of posting it publicly, is one of the most intimate digital gestures a person can make. And it has nothing to do with the content itself. Second, the timing of when she shares things with you can tell you more about her emotional state than what she actually sends. Keep both of those in your mind, because once you understand the mechanism behind them, you won't just be able to read this one signal. You'll start noticing a pattern of behavior you were blind to before. Let's get into what's actually happening in her mind when she hits that share button, and why it says more than you think. Most men assume that if a woman is falling for them, she'll say so, or at least act obviously nervous, flirty, or transparent about it. That belief comes from watching how men typically behave when they're interested: direct, forward, sometimes even blunt. So men project that same pattern onto women and expect matching behavior. That assumption is wrong, and it's costing men relationships they don't even know they had a shot at. Here's the truth. Women, especially women who are emotionally intelligent or who've been hurt before, rarely lead with direct declarations. Instead, they test the waters through low-risk, low-exposure gestures. A share is about as low risk as it gets. It doesn't require vulnerability. It doesn't require a confession. If you don't respond well, she can shrug it off. It was just a video. Relax. But if you do respond well, she's just opened a door without ever having to admit she opened it. This is where cognitive dissonance comes into play. A lot of women, especially in the early to mid stages of developing feelings, are still telling themselves a story. We're just friends. I'm not ready for anything serious. I don't even know if I like him like that. But her behavior contradicts that story. She thinks of you when she sees something funny. She thinks of you when a song comes on that reminds her of a conversation you had. The share is her subconscious acting faster than her conscious narrative can catch up to. Real world scenario. Picture this. A woman is scrolling through her phone late at night. She sees a meme, nothing special, just mildly funny. She has 40 people she could send it to, a group chat, a best friend, a sibling. Instead, her thumb goes straight to your name. She doesn't overthink it, it takes her 2 seconds. But in those 2 seconds, her brain did something significant. It filtered through every relationship in her life and selected you as the person she wanted to share that small moment with. That's not random. That's a signal of who currently occupies emotional real estate in her mind. Here's the part almost nobody talks about. The specific type of content she shares tells you even more than the act itself. A funny meme sent casually is interest. A song with lyrics that hint at longing, love, or connection, sent with little to no explanation, is often a woman testing whether you'll pick up on what she can't say directly. This links back to something psychologists call indirect signaling, a behavior pattern especially common in individuals with an anxious or fearful attachment style, where the fear of rejection makes direct communication feel too exposed, so the message gets delivered in code instead. And this is where most men fail, not because they're unintelligent, but because they're undertrained in reading indirect signals. They see the meme, they laugh, they reply, lol, and move on. The moment passes, uninterpreted, and she quietly logs that data point. He didn't get it. Do that enough times and she'll stop sending signals altogether, not because her feelings faded, but because she decided you weren't safe to be vulnerable with, even in this small, low-stakes way. So the real question isn't just, is she sharing things with me? It's, what am I doing with what she sends me? Because the share is only step one. What happens after determines whether this becomes a pattern or a memory of something that almost happened. There's one more layer here that changes everything. Timing. A woman who shares something with you in the middle of the day, casually, between other tasks, that's comfort, that's friendliness. A woman who shares something with you late at night when she's alone with her thoughts and has had time to reflect, that's different. Late night contact, especially unprompted, tends to correlate with lowered social defenses and increased emotional honesty. She's not performing for anyone at 11:47 p.m. She's just thinking about you, and she let that thought turn into action. Now that you understand what's actually happening underneath the surface, let's talk about what you do with this information, because noticing a signal without knowing how to respond to it is almost as bad as missing it entirely. Step 1. Respond to the content, not just the gesture. When she sends you something, don't just react with a generic LOL or a thumbs up emoji. Actually engage with what she sent. If it's a song, tell her what part of it hit you, or ask her what made her think of it. If it's a meme, build on the joke instead of just acknowledging it. The psychology here is simple. Engagement signals attention, and attention is the currency of early emotional connection. When you respond with depth, you're telling her, without saying it outright, that you noticed, that you're paying attention to her, not just replying out of politeness. The common mistake, treating every share like small talk. A generic one-word reply tells her subconscious that the gesture landed flat. Do this repeatedly, and you train her to stop sending you things altogether. Step 2. Mirror the vulnerability. Don't escalate past it. If she sends you something with emotional undertones, a song about longing, a quote about connection, match that energy. Don't panic and try to make it official right there in the chat. Don't ignore it and pretend it's nothing either. Meet her exactly where she is. Why this works. Women testing the waters with indirect signals are gauging emotional safety, not asking for a relationship contract. If you respond with calm, matched vulnerability, you prove you can be trusted with bigger, more direct signals later. The common mistake, overreacting. Turning a simple song share into, does this mean you like me? This forces her out of the safety of ambiguity before she's ready, and it often causes her to retreat and get more guarded next time. Step 3, track the pattern, not the single instance. One share means something. Repeated, consistent shares over time, especially paired with things like remembering small details about your life or reaching out first, means significantly more. Stop analyzing isolated moments in a vacuum and start watching the trend line. Why this works. Emotional attachment builds through repetition, not intensity. A woman who consistently, casually includes you in her daily thoughts is doing something far more meaningful than a single grand romantic gesture. Attachment theory tells us that security is built through predictable, repeated positive interactions, not through occasional bursts of intensity. The common mistake, dismissing a pattern because you're waiting for one big, unmistakable sign. That sign might never come in the form you're imagining. The pattern is the sign. Step 4, create space for her to go first sometimes. Once you've noticed the pattern, resist the urge to chase it constantly. If you always initiate, you'll never know whether she'd reach out on her own. Pull back slightly, not coldly, just enough to create room, and watch whether she fills that space. Why this works? This isn't a manipulation tactic, it's a diagnostic one. A woman who's genuinely invested will notice the gap and move to close it. A woman who was only mildly interested will let the silence sit. Either way, you get real information instead of a story you told yourself. The common mistake, mistaking withdrawal for a game or using it as a punishment. The point isn't to manufacture anxiety. It's to give her the chance to show you, honestly, where you stand. Step 5, say something real at the right moment. Eventually, indirect signals need to be met with directness. Otherwise, you can both stay in this loop of implication forever, and one or both of you will eventually get tired of waiting for the other to be brave first. Once the pattern is undeniable, be the one who names it. Simply, calmly, without pressure. Why this works. Directness, delivered with warmth instead of anxiety, is deeply attractive. It shows emotional maturity and removes the exhausting guesswork she's been doing just as much as you have. The common mistake, waiting too long, hoping she'll say it first, and letting the moment quietly expire because neither of you wanted to be the one to risk it. Here's what I want you to sit with before you close this video. Right now, some of you are going to go back through months of messages, hunting for proof, trying to turn this into a checklist you can win. I understand the impulse. Uncertainty is uncomfortable, and certainty feels like relief. But chasing proof usually backfires because it turns you into an investigator instead of a man who's simply present, secure, and paying attention. The truth is, you don't need to catch her in the act of loving you. You need to become the kind of man she feels safe enough to keep signaling to again and again until the signals eventually turn into words. Anxiety makes you want to rush this. It makes you want to text back the second you notice the pattern, to demand clarity, to collapse the mystery because sitting inside it feels unbearable. But rushing an emotional process that hasn't finished cooking rarely speeds it up. It usually interrupts it. Feelings that are still forming need room to keep forming. Pressure them too early and you risk freezing them in place, or worse, pushing them backward. Here's the reframe I want to leave you with. Her sharing something with you isn't a finish line. It's not proof you can stop paying attention or stop growing as a man. It's an invitation, a small, quiet door she opened because some part of her already trusts you more than she said out loud. What you do with that invitation matters more than the invitation itself. Overthinking every reply time, every emoji, every gap between messages, that's not devotion. That's self-punishment disguised as vigilance. The version of you that notices the signal, responds with warmth, and then goes back to living his life fully, building, working, growing, showing up for the people around him, is far more magnetic than the version of you sitting by his phone, decoding every notification. Women are drawn to calm the same way anyone is drawn to safety. Not detached calm, not fake indifference. Real calm, the kind that comes from knowing your worth doesn't depend on her next move. That's not a strategy. That's just who you need to become anyway for your own sake, regardless of how this particular story ends. So if she shared something with you recently, a song, a video, A thought that came out of nowhere? Don't overanalyze it into oblivion. And don't dismiss it either. Just notice it. Respond like a man who's paying attention, not a man who's desperate for confirmation. Let the pattern reveal itself over time because it will, one way or another. And if it turns out she wasn't ready, or the timing wasn't right, or this particular story doesn't end the way you hoped, you'll still be a man who knows how to read people, hold his center, and move forward without losing himself in the waiting. That skill will serve you in every relationship you ever have, not just this one. She already told you something. The only question left is whether you're going to become the kind of man worth telling more. If this helped you see something you'd been missing, hit subscribe. There's a lot more of this waiting for you. And drop a comment letting me know. Has she shared something with you recently that you're only now starting to understand? I read every single one.